Listeners, we're back with Nagesh, probably on the final episode of the Journey of Nagesh Kukunoor. So, Nagesh, we came till Hyderabad Blues 2. Next is Iqbal. So, from Hyderabad Blues to a subject that is, I mean, you are a master at going into different genres, but Iqbal, which is like completely different.
I've said this. I've always written about stuff that excites me. I've not followed traditional safe route, and movies have very strange histories. Iqbal took a very funny route. As a matter of fact, I always wanted to write about disability, and so I had this idea of writing about a disabled boy, a deaf-mute boy, who excelled in the sport of Malkham.
Okay.
So I went around pitching the idea. You know, half the reactions of the producers or the investors sitting across the desk would be like, Malkham? What is Malkham? You know, so it really didn't sort of take off from there. Yeah, because the sport was not exciting. And then it so happened that the then president Abdul Kalam, to commemorate his second year in the office, they had decided that they wanted different people to contribute tales about children. So I said, you know, maybe this will work well. So I wrote the short story of Iqbal. And when I was trying to write the short story, just describing Malcolm took most of the words of the story.
Okay.
We were all restricted to, I think, about 2,000 words or something like that. And then it dawned on me, I said, what if I change the sport to cricket? Because it's a sport that's so widely understood in this country that I won't have to spend time describing the sport. And so I wrote the short story about this boy who wanted to play cricket. And it was funny, the moment I switched the sport to cricket, on a parallel track, I had investors lined up.
Wow.
And who just wanted to do it.
Was it the same time that Lagan came, or?
No.
No, Lagan?
It was well after Lagan.
Well after Lagan, okay. So there was about at least 2 years or so,
or
right?
more, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And the most important thing about Iqbal was the fact that I made the shift finally to an all-Hindi film.
Yes, so far it has been in English.
It was English
Right.
entirely
And,
or English.
Yeah.
And Iqbal was a very marked shift. I always felt this about movies made in India with Indian subjects, that you have to be true to the milieu that you're talking about. And, I've seen some films made on India about... from filmmakers who reside outside of India, and they've used English as a language of communication, which doesn't make any sense. So I had to be true to the material that I was dealing with. So I delved into my first full-fledged Hindi feature.
So you write the script in English, somebody writes the dialogues?
No, I write the dialogues too.
Okay,
I write the dialogues in English as well.
Okay.
The thing is, I have a very close friend of mine who's actually a professor in the US, and his passion is Urdu poetry.
Okay.
And he's someone that I've known for a very long while. So I would write my scripts in English and I'd send it off to him. Then he would translate.
Okay.
So even the Hindi portions of Teen Diware, he translated.
I see. Okay.
So he would translate, and then I, in a room with several of my assistant directors and Elahi and everyone, we sit and we test every line to see. My Hindi is good in the sense that I can understand what's right, what's wrong. I don't write well in Hindi. So
because you don't think in Hindi.
I don't think in Hindi, and I don't want to waste my time. See, English is my strong suit.
Right.
So I write everything, all the nuances in English, and then someone else who can grasp it, someone like Hussein, would actually give me the juice of what I wanted in Hindi. And that's how I try and find the balance.
Because, it doesn't work like that normally. Normally, like, you're the writer, director. And
see, there are different ways. Traditionally in India, someone writes the story, the director writes the screenplay, a third person writes the dialogues.
Right.
But in the West, a script writer will write everything. they might work off of a story idea or a concept that someone's given them, but most times the story is theirs, the screenplay is theirs, and so are the lines. And when they talk about a screenplay, they talk about a screenplay that's inclusive of
Dialogues, okay.
Not
just the script or just, and then somebody else writes the dialogues. And
the Indian setup has been very different.
Right.
And now it's changing. There are a lot of writers who actually write the way it's written in the West and elsewhere.
Okay. So, Shreyas Talpade and Iqbal are become so synonymous, right?
Correct.
So, Iqbal happened and then they say ki Shreyas happened.
Correct.
So, how did you find him? I mean, he was not a well-known actor. He was probably there in Marathi theatre for some time.
Yeah, and he was, when I found him, he was actually doing a Marathi serial. And I had, I started auditioning. The big challenge for Iqbal was to find an actor who could also bowl convincingly. See, the most difficult thing to do, or fake, for that matter, in cinema, when it comes to a sport is bowling in cricket. Okay, let me rephrase. In cricket, an actor can fake being a batsman. He can fake spin bowling, but you cannot fake pace bowling.
Okay.
You cannot. You need the run up, you need the leap, you need to look. You can't face it.
You have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, given the amount of time I had, I knew that I couldn't train an actor to that kind of perfection. I needed an actor who could bowl as well as act well. So I auditioned extensively. First I started with sportsmen. And I found that sportsmen make terrible actors. Then I started with actors and found that actors make terrible sportsmen. So eventually the search led me to Shreyas and one other boy actually who I'd shortlisted. And Shreyas's honesty was something that came through his audition process like instantly for me. And that's how we ended up getting the role.
There is a recurring theme that you've mentioned, that you're looking honesty in an actor's face.
Right.
So what does that tell you, that they can portray the character well, or what is it?
See, honesty is a very intangible element that speaks differently to different directors. When I look at an actor, I feel if he or she can bring honesty to the table, which is they are able to not act. When you act in such a way, it's almost called unconscious competence, that we as the audience don't know you're acting.
Okay,
we just
so you're
think
saying
you're
that it
being.
should be very natural.
Natural is a very wrong word here,
Okay.
because what people just assume that without any training as an actor they can be a natural actor. It can't. It's an inherent trait of being honest. And so why it becomes such a challenge is all you have between you and the audience is this little box into which you're going to communicate everything.
Right.
And that you cannot lie to that little window. You cannot, because it's very impassionate. It's not a human being that is being swayed by emotions. And so someone like Shreyas and Juhi and Nasir and all these guys have this incredible ability to be honest on camera. So the role defines the boundaries in which they have to perform, but you still have to make us believe that you're real.
You're in that character.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of Indian cinema has rested on actors being able to act. And what I mean by act is stage acting. That the character's big, he's saying the lines, but even if you actually go back, even the actors who were big and very dramatic had the ability to be honest when the right role hit them.
Came to them.
Yeah. So even in NTR, sometimes when he was extremely theatrical and he did all the big mythological films, that is completely over the top. That's nowhere near honest. But yet at the same time, when you take his simpler, smaller movies earlier on in his career, you can see the honesty come through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's what's your take on what switches for the actor? Is it just the roles they get, or
No, it's an ability that some actors are great at cheating the camera. So they could be thinking about having a beer in their head, but they're still so honest in their portrayal that
Wow.
that's what the audience sees. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that was something that my acting teacher also taught me. He said, it's irrelevant what's going on in your head.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to see as the audience is,
Mm-hmm.
what you are trying to convey in that role.
In the
What is
role.
the degree
Mhm.
of honesty? Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was your best experience about Iqbal? Because that became a big hit. It won
Right.
awards.
Well, shooting any film is such a pleasure,
Mhm.
So Iqbal also was a wonderful journey.
Mhm.
We went to Tenali, and when you're doing a film, it's all these little bits that are done. It's a very detail-oriented process, and it doesn't, and it's much later when you actually sit in on the edit and sometimes on the final mix that you actually see everything coming together. So I've been lucky enough that virtually every movie I've shot,
Mhm.
I have enjoyed the process. Those little bits, directing Nasir again, a fantastic time directing Shweta Prasad,
Mhm.
working with Shreyas, Girish
Mhm.
Karnad. So it's and I don't studio shoot.
Mhm.
So for me, the joy is I love to go away to another
A
place
location or
and
okay.
create this little world in which I live myself for 1 to 3 months, and then
Yeah.
I come out of it and I have another story.
Right. You know that I was just thinking about it, that when you start a movie,
Right.
there is an excitement of a new journey. You've done it. So what do you feel at the end of when you do the final wrap of a shooting, or when your movie is like released and done? So how do you just move on to the next one? How?
Finishing a film actually can be very depressing. It can
Okay.
be very disheartening.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, in the West, people actually undergo therapy
After a
to
movie?
tackle, yeah.
Okay.
Because when you're making a movie, you create this incredible artificial world
Mm-hmm.
that everyone lives in.
Mm-hmm.
Your adrenaline is pumping 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Every emotion is heightened. It's a very exciting process for the ones who truly enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're done with it,
Mm-hmm.
the body craves the adrenaline.
It's almost like your postpartum depression. that people
Absolutely.
say,
It's almost like a drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever a movie gets over, for the people it is really hard. So typically what I do is, when I shoot the film, when I'm done with the shoot, I hop on a flight and I head back to the States. Literally about 2 or 3 days after I shoot.
Hmm.
And the first 2 or 3 days that I'm back there, I just sleep.
Okay.
I just sleep,
Mm-hmm.
sort of let my body bring its chemicals back to a regular balance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I nicely relax for a month, family, friends, do all that, and then I come back to
So
start
why
the edit.
head back to States for sleeping?
Sanity.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
safety net.
Okay.
I like silence, I like long drives, I like hikes, I like all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And all these are afforded to me in the States, so
Right.
I run back there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Nasir had a great role in Iqbal,
Right.
and everybody's role was perfect. You know, the sister's role, the one like Shreya's role. Everybody had the roles. It's almost like everybody played their part to the best of, I guess, everybody's abilities. I don't know how else to put it.
Right.
So, how do you bring the best out of people? I mean, is there
See, you really don't know what you're doing till the movie comes out. Let me be honest. Sometimes when you finish a movie, there'll be 10 people who watch it and say, this is junk. Sholay is a great example. Sholay was made and no one wanted to touch it. All the
Absolutely.
distributors
Yeah.
passed on it. So you really don't know what a movie does. All you know and you can control as a director is when you're on set, you have a vision and you just get all these people to fill their different slots and fulfill that vision. That's it.
okay?
Once that is done, you really don't know what you've created. You have to just make sure that there's some degree of clarity in your head, some blueprint that you follow. That's it.
So the rest is not in your hands, obviously.
Oh, not at all. Like most things in life.
Right.
We think we're in control of a lot of things we really
You're
aren't.
really not.
Yeah.
So it took you after Iqbal,
Right.
you went to Door. Till now, you've been writing your own movies. I think Door was the first one where you took the story from a different movie and then adapted it.
Right. Door was actually based on a true life incident,
Mm-hmm.
but a Malayalam movie called Perumala Kalam was made first.
Mm-hmm.
So I could have gone to the original incident and done it, but because Perumala Kalam was made,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to, go the wrong route.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought the rights to Perumala Kalam,
Okay.
and then I rewrote the story in my own.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Setting is different, the people are different,
Everything.
is different.
Everything
Just
is
the
different.
basic premise of the story was the same.
Just the fact that this woman goes in search of this other woman to save her husband's life.
Right.
That's it.
And you extracted, the performances both by Ayesha and Gulpanag were like so spot on. And you've repeated Ayesha in many of your movies.
Yeah.
And you repeat your music directors
Yeah.
and your producer. So there is this
And my
like,
cinematographers.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like once upon a time it was like very well known, right? Raj Kapoor and all would always use Shankar Jaikishan and
Correct. Shailendra to write.
right, and Shailendra to write, and then you would have Devanand go for S.D. Burman.
Correct.
So I guess it's like a team that works well. You probably continue it.
See, again, a movie is an extremely long, cumbersome creative process.
Mhm.
Unlike the other creative sort of endeavors that require more of a personal soul-searching sort
Mhm.
of approach,
Mhm.
a movie is bringing together hundreds, and the larger the film, sometimes thousands of people together to fulfill
Right.
this
Yeah.
one vision. So you do develop a comfort zone with different people,
Mhm.
and you're not willing to risk it or change it.
Mhm.
So
Because there's a trust built up, and there is-
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And if you actually see my first 5 films,
Mhm.
and then you see Iqbal,
Yeah.
you see a marked change in the way the film was lensed.
Mhm.
Because by the time Iqbal rolled around, I sort of got a sense for what was happening in India,
Mhm.
which is in India, pretty movies mean good photography.
Okay.
The photography can be real and gritty, and photography, actually good photography has to justify the genre, has to justify the space, has to justify the story.
Mhm.
But in India it's not that. So I said, you know what, at least to get past the first hurdle,
Mhm.
let me make the next couple of movies are going to be pretty, they're going to look spectacular,
Mhm.
and then I'm going to tell my story.
Okay.
So for that I needed someone with a different eyesight, and not just stupid pretty, but it has to make sense of the story.
Yeah.
And I found Shudip Chatterjee, the
Mhm.
person who lensed Iqbal,
Mhm.
Door,
Mhm.
Bombay to Bangkok, and Asha. 4 of my films back to back is
Mhm.
what he lensed, and you can see the difference.
Mhm.
The difference that a good cinematographer can bring to a film
Mhm.
just elevates the game.
Mhm.
And that's what happened with both Iqbal and Door.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and always, all your movies have great uplifting music. You've repeated Salim Suleiman
Yeah.
many times.
Many. 6 or 7.
6 or 7,
film, yeah.
right, yeah. So how does, I think when you started working with Salim Suleiman, they were still not a very big name in the film
No, they were not
industry.
at all. As a matter of fact, one of their first films that they actually scored the background to, they might have scored one film before, I'm not 100% sure, but
Mhm.
the first, I want to say almost the first film that they scored the background to, I need to be corrected on this, is Teen Diware.
Okay.
That's
Mhm.
where our association began.
Mhm.
And I remember when they did the first pass, they asked me,
Mhm.
how do you want the background score? I said, you guys take a stab. We all are the
Mhm.
music directors.
Right.
And then there were no songs in Teen Diware at all.
Mhm.
And then I'll look at it, and I remember when they first came back, it was mainstream Bollywood music. It was dan da dan dan,
Mhm.
all that. And I
Right.
said, oh my God. I said, no. So we started from scratch,
Mhm.
and then we went through bit by bit, and they're very talented, very intelligent
Mhm.
musicians, and they were able to latch on to the
Mhm.
right groove.
Right.
and that's how we gelled. And then came Hyderabad Blues too. Nothing much had to be done, but then came Iqbal
and then
Door,
yeah,
Bombay to Bangkok, and Ashai and 8x10.
8x10. All of them have like great music from them.
Yeah.
Door has one of my favorite songs. I've told you earlier. Ye Hausla. I mean, it uplifts me every time I listen. I just can't. I keep rewinding and listening and listening.
Yeah. See, it has been a recurring theme in my films. I've tried very hard not to record love songs, and which is kind of funny because 99 out of every 100 songs that come on air are love songs.
So I think that would be interesting as to how you would record a love song.
I did one eventually, I think, not by choice, but I think for 8x10, I think there was a love song. But I tried to shy away from that because Bombay to Bangkok had a little bit of
it was there, but it was more of a fun kind of thing.
Yeah, but the thing that for me is very exciting, and obviously even with Rockford, I started it as early as Rockford, Asma Ke Paar Shayad, and then with Iqbal, Ashai, and then with Ye Hausla Kaise Jhuke from Door. I've liked uplifting songs, but I've liked songs that can be in a very general space. And here one has to tip the hat to Hussain, my friend, Mir Ali Hussain. He wrote the lyrics to Ye Hausla. That was the first song that he wrote the lyrics to. That, you can capture such wonderful universal emotions, and wrap that into a song. And I followed that same kind of pattern in subsequent films also, but a movie does well and the song becomes popular. That's how it works in India. Or, a song can become popular with the right amount of promotion. Both ways. So there's a phenomenal song in Ashai, sung by Zubin, called Ab Mujhko Jeena, which is one of the most uplifting songs that I've put in any of my films, and virtually no one knows about it. And I really think for the listeners, you should play that song.
Zubin Garg. Yeah, I think we should level.
It's called Ab Mujhko Jeena. And Zubin had sung another song from Bombay to Bangkok, which again, in my opinion, is a great song on. He talks about love, but he talks about love through love of life.
Okay.
And the song was Dheere Dheere Chal Zindagani. Again, beautiful lyrics. It's like life, just slow down.
Right.
Don't go so fast, kind of thing. So, but the problem is when it's not a problem, but it's a good problem to have. When a song like Ye Hausla does well, then automatically it becomes a household name.
Right.
But these other songs were also gems, in my opinion, at least.
So Door was a big hit.
Right.
People loved it. The actresses everybody was good, and you chose the backdrop of one is Kashmir and the other is Rajasthan.
Right.
Like completely stark without any greenery, and one like full of greenery. So was that a conscious, I'm sure it was a conscious decision of like having two backdrops which are completely stark different.
Right.
So and it conveys. So it shows that two people from completely different backgrounds and how they gel.
Well, there was just I guess an intelligent visual ploy. Beyond that, I didn't have a specific I can give some pseudo intellectual reasons for one having greenery and the other having a complete desolation in her life, because that's what happens in Aisha's life. Yeah. But that was not the design as much as in I wanted this really rich contrast, and this country has a lot to offer in terms of that, of these two extreme sort of visual elements. And at some point they're both going to come together.
Right.
So I remember the very first conversation I had with Shadeep, the cinematographer, this was just an idea. I hadn't even written the story. And I told Shredeep, I said, I'm thinking of this movie, and it's based on this kind of thing, and one woman begins a journey from Kashmir, and we couldn't shoot in Kashmir, so we ended up shooting in Himachal. That's where our journey began. But she begins a journey in Himachal, and this other woman's in Rajasthan, and he said, oh man, you're saying all the right things to get a cinematographer salivating, so you don't have to say anything else. I'm on the project. So I remember that. So it was, it was just one of those things as I was starting to sort of put the story together that popped in my head.
So when a movie gets finished, how do you feel with respect to, it's over with? So do you worry about how the audience will take it? Is it there somewhere at the back of the mind? Like, will people accept it, or will it become a hit or not?
No, see, movies are made as much as it's a personal journey for a filmmaker. The end result is that you want the widest possible audience to see it. And of course, there's just this, sort of overwhelming fear in the pit of your belly before a movie comes out. But at that point, you're in control of nothing. So typically, the way I've worked is I try to start on another film by the time my existing film comes up for release. It's a very, very escapist attitude, but I know some other filmmakers who do that. So you're so buried in work on your next film that in case things don't go well with this film, then that blow is softened.
Okay, so you have a hope like, okay, this movie, it'll work.
That's
or
all
at least you try to, or you hope that it'll work.
Exactly.
So, after Door, many of your movies actually were not a big hit.
Right.
So Door was probably, and then, so how do you deal with this?
Well, it's the part of the process of being a filmmaker. And I think I mentioned this early in the interview that movies now have become so much about marketing.
Right.
And it feels that I really need to learn to play that game fast. Because it's a game that I've never played. Even in movies of mine which did well, I didn't do anything to quote-unquote market it correctly. I just did what I always do, which is a bunch of interviews before the release. And then, you cut your promos and the movie comes out.
Right.
These days, it's not that at all. You need gimmicks, you need controversies, you need some kind of nonsense that just keeps popping up in the press. And you need to keep the movie current, and then you need to perhaps punch
have an
through
item song
with
in it.
With a song that grabs people's attention. So the game has changed in terms of marketing. And my films that didn't do well, Bombay to Bangkok did not do well primarily because the audience's expectations following Iqbal and Door were somewhere else. And this is where I said, filmmakers are slotted in boxes and forced to follow certain patterns, and I have never ever resorted to that.
Right.
And I remember when we were shooting Bombay to Bangkok, I used to laugh all the time, and Shredeep, the cinematographer and the director, very, very close on a set, and he would constantly say, "Is film ke liye apne ko joote padenge," primarily because, fortunately or unfortunately, you'd set such a lofty sort of space following
for most of your movies.
That to do just a
comedy or
pass comedy without anything. But see, this is the thing that I've always said: you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I have, when it was told to me that this was not traditional wisdom, I did it, and I had success with it. I had a career with it. All of a sudden, for me, it didn't make sense to abandon that ideal and start playing safe, because I felt if I start playing safe, I'm going to lose my soul as a filmmaker. And I followed that trend very clearly. What followed after Bombay to Bangkok was just incredibly, horribly bad marketing of my films. And that sort of really showed. 8x10 completely got butchered up in the sort of release, and it came delayed, about a year delayed. It came about a year later, and a very, very poor marketing job, marketing and publicity job. There was all this confusion about when the first IPL was coming on. People were terrified. There was a looming strike, and the movie just was pushed into theaters at the very last minute. Things like this are, in hindsight, when I look at it, I mean, these are horrific mistakes.
So whenever you've worked with a big production house,
right,
things
for
some reason didn't work out. Right?
Yeah, it was one of those things, and I've always felt that I'm a pure filmmaker, and I'm not trying to be some, it's not a lofty term I'm using, but I love the process of filmmaking. I've never ventured into the process of how to be a celebrity or how to garner the maximum publicity out of a film. I've never played that game. So I always trusted other professionals to do it. But after these 2 or 3 films, now I'm involved in everything.
Okay.
I might not understand everything. I might not have the smarts to be able to push the marketing strategy right, but I'm at least going to make sure that my film comes out the right way. And this blind trust it's done.
It's done.
Yeah.
So a lot of people these days, but just before a movie releases, the stars and all come on all TV channels.
Right.
It's a big thing. You've never done that for your movies.
Well,
probably because I don't recall seeing any of your movies being promoted in that. Was that a conscious decision or
no? See, when you have stars, so the 2 movies of mine that could have played that game were 8x10 and Ashai.
Yeah.
But again, that is something which is a function of a very good publicity and marketing campaign that needs to be executed where the star's potential is maximized, where the most amount of interest is generated for a film. 8x10 being an Akshay film didn't do that well at all. And there was no excuse because 8x10 was, and I'm saying this of course as a filmmaker, was not a bad film.
Yeah. It had a lot of suspense, and it was
a thriller.
Yeah, it was a thriller.
And as far as a thriller goes with Akshay Kumar in the lead, you can maximize it to a certain potential.
Right.
And it didn't reach that potential. I'm not talking about making it a massive super hit. I'm just talking about it reaching its box office potential. That's all. Asha was a much more difficult film. Asha, I knew I was taking a big risk, but again, like I said, I write about things that I care about.
Right, absolutely.
Asha was a man dying of cancer.
Yeah.
So I knew that was a very difficult film for the, public to digest. And it was absolutely true.
But it probably fared a little better than 8x10.
I think, but Asha also had mixed reviews. Not everyone took to the material, and most of the people who actually walked out of the film said it was too close to home, and so it kind of sent them into a very somber, depressive state. Okay. Yeah, and
so that
no one wants to go to a theater and get depressed and come back. So
okay, so. It's interesting that.
But once again, with Asha, I must point out, Asha was delayed by a year and a half. The film was supposed to release in 2008 and eventually came out in 2010.
Wow.
So again, bad marketing publicity, butchering by the production company. So that's what happened.
So how do you deal with that when you?
That is horrific. That takes its toll on the filmmaker. There's no denying it. I mean, you try and find your sane outlets and friends and family, and you go off and write more stuff and you start your next feature. But that is a very, very difficult time.
But it's there at the back of your mind all the time.
Oh, all the time.
Right.
Because I completed the film. It was ready for release in September 2008. The date was announced and everything, and then there was a squabble between the production company and the distribution company over things, and the film got delayed, and then suddenly you go into limbo. Right. So you don't know what you should do. Should you start another film? Should you not? Is that the right thing to wait for it? Those are very, very trying times. Yeah.
And when reviews come out, do you pay any attention to the reviews?
See, it's now 6.5 years since I had cable TV or subscribe to newspapers. So I typically am in a vacuum. I did this right around the time that Door was being made in 2006, and since then I've not had.
Which is probably a good thing.
Which is mostly a good thing. So even though Door got phenomenal reviews and all that, I was not privy to it, and I was working on the next couple of films. But even prior to that, when my other films would come out and people would say, "Oh, you're getting great reviews" and stuff like that, I never much cared for them.
Yeah, because it's one person's point of view, even if he or she is a critic, isn't it?
Correct. But the problem is they have the ability to influence. So that's something that you have to play that game.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to. But yeah, so when the latter films, Bombay to Bangkok, I think got the most negative reviews. When things like that happen, you just kind of go, okay, I'm sorry you didn't like it, but what else can you do? Like I said, most of the times when a film is coming out, I'm working on another film. So that usually keeps me distracted and away from nonsense like this.
So Ashray took a long time to release. So did 8 by 10. But Mode went through
absolutely
all the
as per track, and
So you repeated Ayesha again.
I repeated Ayesha. The Mode, simply, honestly, the story I guess didn't appeal to a lot of people. But also the thing with movies these days is there's a very, very short window for you to capitalize on the audience's attention. That's all I'm saying. And in order for you to grab that window, a lot has to be spent on marketing. On Mode, we spent the best that we could. I mean, it was not a lot, but we spent the best that we could on the marketing, and it really didn't generate any interest.
What I've noticed is whenever a Nagesh Kukunoor movie shows the protagonist or the underdog soaring high and it's an uplifting movie, it's a hit, or people have appreciated it. Whenever there is an element of
Door didn't have
it did in the end, right? So
no, but all my movies have happy endings. I don't think that's any excuse. See, with a film, sometimes things work, things don't work. And again, like I said, if you go back and say, okay, Iqbal worked, let me make another Iqbal. Door worked, let me make another Door. I think as a filmmaker, you start cutting corners, you start catering to what might work, and you lose your way and soul in the process. It is difficult to digest films that don't work. I'm not denying it. You have to live with those demons. Hopefully you come out stronger at the other end. Mode, I felt, again, I said I wouldn't make a love story, and then eventually I made a love story because it was my take on a love story. It was a Taiwanese film that I saw, and I loved it, so we bought the rights and tried to adapt it in Hindi. I was just surprised that we couldn't make a mini dent also, and here's where conventional wisdom comes into play. When I was shooting Bombay to Bangkok, I was told by people who read the script, they said, if you just take the same script and put a Hrithik Roshan in it, this movie would have been something else. Or Hrithik Roshan was just an example. But, and that's what happens, that when you don't cast stars, then it's an uphill battle. In my case, when I cast stars, both Akshay and John, I cast them against the type. I didn't play to their strengths.
Anything unconventional.
It's difficult. If John had taken off his shirt, punched people, been cute, had a song or two, it's a different ball game. But John dying of cancer in shirts, losing weight, and looking gaunt, not good. Akshay Kumar, brooding, deep,
without
thoughtful,
his comic or action,
without his all craziness, not good. So again.
But Nagesh continues his journey.
Well, things that worked for you are what you normally bank on. And like I said, I have this constant discussion with people who always say, why don't you make another Iqbal? And my answer to that is, you cannot make another Iqbal when you start out to make another Iqbal. Okay, I'm going to tell another uplifting story. Let me see all the elements that work, and So my new film, Lakshmi, in my opinion, is another Iqbal. It's the story of a child prostitute who actually had the guts to take her traffickers to court, and she won the case. It's a big thing. So it's the story of an underdog. It's very uplifting, but at the same time, the subject matter is extremely dark,
very bold.
Exactly.
Not sure if people
and it's hard for people to digest. And so far, when I've been showing the film in small limited circles, people come away shaken. So it's a very, very strong reaction. Again, the idea was not to soften it and make, if I'm talking about child prostitution, it can't be
can't soften
here's
the
here's
stark
a nice
reality has
exactly
to be portrayed.
I've never done that. So so again, I have to be true to myself, because what worked for me also didn't work for me, but could also work for me again.
So you're staying true to Nagesh Kukunoor, which is
I
the most
hope
important.
I hope so. People think that, when I made a Bombay to Bangkok or an 8x10 or an Ashai, that I kind of, went a little ways and then tried to come back. It's not true at all. Because even an 8x10 was written about 7 years prior. It's just that I needed a bigger budget for and eventually when I got Akshay, I got my budget to make the film. So I want to dabble in every single genre.
There are a few fun questions now.
Okay.
You've gone through all the journey of Nagesh Kukunoor from his childhood to the latest movie.
Okay.
Still, the movie is the theme, right? Because you are a filmmaker, can't get away from that.
Sounds good.
So, if you had all the budget in the world,
right,
what kind of a movie would you like to make?
There's a sci-fi film that I wrote now. It's almost about 12 years ago.
So that was just probably before you started your film journey?
15 years ago is when I started. But it was about the second year into my filmmaking process that I actually wrote this film. That would be very exciting. Or a large period piece like Godfather or Casablanca would be very exciting.
Cool. So you've always said that your movies are for the world audience.
Correct.
So Hollywood movies, do you think if you had the backing you would love to do a Hollywood movie?
Someday.
Okay.
It's always been the dream. So yeah, someday hopefully I'll get there.
Okay. So I'm not sure if this is whether you'll answer this or not, but which one of all your movies is your favorite one of all the movies that you have directed so far? Do you have a favorite?
I get asked this all the time, and the honest truth is I don't have a favorite.
Okay.
But the most special film in my life is Hyderabad Blues, because before Hyderabad Blues I was a chemical engineer. After Hyderabad Blues I was a filmmaker. So that journey can never be duplicated. After that you're having fun as a filmmaker. But it's not a journey of self-discovery and all that.
Right.
The first one
is like it's a big step.
It's unparalleled.
Okay. We talked about your favorite movies yesterday.
Right.
We talked about the top 5 movies which which is your favorite song?
Oh boy.
I know you have lots and lots of them. You're a big Kishore Kumar fan.
I have about a top 200 Kishore Kumar list, so you can pick any one of those. But honest to God, there is no favorite song. I always like that day for the Antakshari that I hummed is Bhavre Ki Gunjan.
Yeah.
That's a song for some reason I just absolutely love.
Okay.
But there are, again, like I said, 100 Kishore Kumar songs easily that could on any given day be my favorite song.
Yeah. Someday you like one, someday the other
Absolutely.
one. Right. Okay, so any favorite dialogue from any movie that is like just stayed with you?
Oh boy.
Samba, something. I'm just giving an example. But
as a kid, I always used to reel off all the dialogues of Sholay. That that whole bit.
The whole movie was
and you remember that.
I remember sitting in the third row and watching that movie and crying when Amitabh dies. So.
Yeah. There's a line from Rishida's movie, which is, I'm pretty sure it's from Anand. And Rajesh Khanna says it, and he says, "Zindagi badi honi chahiye, lambi nahi."
Lambi nahi.
So I love that line. And actually, when I think it was at IFFI, one of the IFFIs, when they felicitated Rajesh Khanna, he came back and with his usual swagger, he said it on stage, and I could have just stood up and freaking clapped. It was beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have a favorite swear word?
Oh, I'm a Hyderabadi, so I got galis coming out the wazoo every second.
Okay.
I cuss a lot. Again, obviously, paying attention to the company I keep. I'm not going to be rude everywhere. But like I said, I'm a Hyderabadi, so even our galis are so sweet that people don't know that we're giving galis. In the north, if you give a gali, everyone knows you're giving a gali.
Yes, obviously.
But if you say kya maa kede, you just do that.
Right.
No one's
Nobody
ever going to
knows
think that it's a gali.
Right.
And a lot of people in Bombay still ask me what that is, but that's how you talk to all your friends here.
So do you give galis on your sets?
I try not to because it creates a very bad atmosphere.
Right.
But even when I dress someone down, I never ever give a gali to that person because that's bringing him down. That's insulting. I will tell him that it's unacceptable. But even if I give galis, it's in the air. It's like God damn it, this didn't happen, and more cuss words. It didn't happen. But yeah.
All right. So you're a Hyderabadi. You give galis all the time.
Correct.
Cool. So if you get a chance to remake a Hindi movie, if you wanted to, which one would it be?
Which Hindi movie would I want to remake? That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. There's a Hindi movie that I'd want to remake. Yeah, maybe we'll go for Sholay.
All right. Okay.
Couldn't pick on a more iconic film like that. See, one of the things, and Door is the only film that I experimented with this format, and it was a very deliberate attempt that, you put your characters in such fantastic vistas, such larger than life vistas, and the camera moves at a very, very deliberate, slow pace, that you create this enormous sense of drama.
Right.
And the story of Door was still very small. It didn't have 100 horses and a king standing in front and giving a big speech. But the drama that a place generates, I like that sometimes. I don't. A story has to make sense to lend itself to that kind of drama. So if I actually could meddle with that once more, but I need to find the right subject, then I would gladly do it. Something that's sort of larger than life.
So Sholay is what...
yeah, Sholay, everything about Sholay is dramatic. Right from the opening sequence, the train slowly drawing into the stage. Yeah. Everything is dramatic. So that's the sort of, language that film sets the tone right at the very beginning.
Right. And it's there throughout every single scene,
frame.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and of course the movie had... actors par excellence in that.
But I want to add a caveat. I don't want to do a take that Ramu did.
Oh, I was going to come to it. Yeah.
So this is stay very much in the classic space. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And is there any actor that you would you're dying to work with? You mentioned yesterday that you always wanted to work with Om Puri and Nasiruddin, which you did.
There are about at least 10 Hollywood actors that I've dreamt of in different periods in my life that actually I would be on a set with them. Nothing's come true so far.
Okay, all right. Well, your thing with the Indian movies have come true, so I'm hoping that.
Well, Colin Firth is absolutely top on my list.
Yes.
My
He's
God,
one of the best actors.
I think I'd be terrified to be in the same room with Daniel Day-Lewis, but it would be an honor to direct him as well. But there were years that I thought the person that I absolutely need to direct at some point was Mel Gibson.
Okay.
That was my dream actor in a big action pick.
Okay.
So even that has not happened. So
well, I'm not sure if Mel Gibson is acting that much these days.
Unfortunately, he's not. But I think he's a phenomenal director actually.
Right.
So,
cool. So you're not for the Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, because most people cite them.
They are from a generation past. I think there are still a couple of good roles left in them. But as a filmmaker, when you start venturing down that road, there are not that very many that you can think of. There's a role that I actually have thought for Nasir, who I haven't worked in a very long time, and it excites me. But at the same time, I think I've already exploited that road with him twice.
Yeah.
So, maybe there's another actor who's
who can
even more exciting who can.
Right.
So it's that kind of thing.
Okay, so all right, so we have some rapid fire just words, and you have to tell me what comes to your mind.
Associations. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So, controversy.
Avoid.
Rumor.
Oh man, shoot the person who started it. Actually.
Okay. Casting couch.
Exists. In this day of cameras, avoid it.
Okay. All right. Money.
Absolute necessity. Gives you the freedom.
Fame.
Double-edged sword. Kinda enjoyable, but at the same time, it's you can become a slave to it.
Actress.
Madhubala.
Actor.
Oh boy. Something as simple as this, and I'm like, blah. Nothing's coming to my mind. All right, since I just said Colin Firth, I'm going to say Colin Firth.
Okay.
How about that?
All right. Villain. Not that your movies have villains in the real sense, but if you had to.
Let's go with the greatest on Indian cinema, Amjad.
Okay.
Amjad Khan.
Okay. The film is what for you?
Current frame of mind, I'd go with Magnolia.
Okay. Upset.
Dishonesty.
Okay. Love.
Oh boy. Man, this is difficult. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm on a psychiatrist's couch, I'm trying to... I'm like, what's the right answer? Maybe...
There is just whatever. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer.
I'm just kidding it. Overused and abused. How about that?
Okay. All right. Favorite director?
I'll go with Coen Brothers.
Okay. What drives you crazy in the good sense? So it was supposed to be mad, bad, and sad, but I didn't want you to take mad in the wrong sense. That's why I said.
Himayat.
Okay. All right. So listeners, Himayat is a kind of mango.
Himayat is a mango known only to the true Hyderabadis.
Yeah.
Not the more poorer common cousin, the Banganpalli.
Yeah. Or the Badshahs. What is it? It's
Benishan.
called Benishan. It is called. Yeah. Okay. Bad. What are you bad at?
What am I bad at? Self-promotion.
Okay. What makes you sad?
This is a very clear answer. Lack of passion. Either in myself or when I see it in people, and I realize they genuinely don't have a passion for something, whatever that be. That kind of,
what kind of a life is it?
Yeah, it kind of freaks me out actually. Yeah.
So what makes Nagesh happy?
I'm just going to reel off many things.
That's fine. That's my last question. What makes Nagesh happy?
Long drives, bagels.
With cream cheese?
Like I listed, Himayat. This maniacal passion to tell stories. And I guess the perfect sunset. That'd probably be it.
All right. So wishing you luck for your new movie. So we'll obviously talk more when the movie is about to release. Thanks, Nagesh. And we've enjoyed this journey of Nagesh Kukunoor, and hope you've enjoyed going back into your childhood. And
I have.
I hope it was not too tiring.
That's why we did it over 4 days.
4 days, yeah.
But no, it's been very enjoyable. I hope you all got at least some good answers, because sometimes the dangerous thing about us filmmakers is we just tend to ramble on and on.
Whatever answers you gave is good for the moment.
Okay.
Next time we do it, something you change your answer, that's fine too.
Okay.
So, all right. Thanks, Nagesh.